It's been asked how to know if my child needs a therapist. Well, I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I teach all over the world about parenting, good communication, how to build strong family bonds, child development, education. And in this video, we're going to be going into things that you can ask yourself so that you know if your child needs a therapist or not. In this video, we're going to talk a little bit about my background and what I learned being a therapeutic treatment care parent for troubled teens, also raising my own children, some of the trends that are happening with therapy, and what you need to know before you sign your child up for therapy. But also, there are going to be questions that you can ask yourself to know if therapy is going to be a good fit for your child, and 2 ways that you can know you have a good therapist if you have determined that you want to go down that road. Therapy for children is more popular than ever before. In fact, even when I started doing therapeutic treatment care for troubled teens back in 1999, where they are thinking of their parents as narcissistic, controlling, all those types of things just because the parent is giving the child instructions and teaching and no answers and things, normal things that parents need to do to raise their children. Where in the world did they get these ideas? Well, many times I find out that the children got these ideas from therapy. And there's therapy that's getting infused into schools anyway. We already have to be on our guard about that because therapy is happening to our children even when we don't sign them up for it. And many of the messages are that you can't trust parental authority, you can't trust your parents are not looking out for your best interest, only you can look out for your best interest, or I will as a therapist, because the parent is giving the message, I'm taking you to somebody who is going to help you with all of your problems. So what does that mean? That means that the parent is declaring this other person is the one that you should listen to. And what if that other person is diagnosing the parent to the child behind the parent's back, or just being this sounding board for gossip? That is going to be bad for the parent-child bond and relationship and might be something that scars the child for life. So my background as a therapeutic treatment care parent, I had a lot of interaction with therapists and psychologists and caseworkers and consultants and all kinds of different people, guardian ad litems and people in the court, and who are working with all of these children. And I decided, after I had a situation with one of my foster children, it was my first foster placement that came to our treatment care facility, to our home, and this child spent 6 months of everybody's time lying to a therapist and sorting out things that were not true at all, because this child was a compulsive liar. And the therapist, even though it was written on the chart that it said compulsive liar, she assumed that the child was being honest with her about all these things. I kept asking, can I come in and meet with you so I know what's being said? I can't help on my side if I don't come in, if I don't talk to you about what's going on. Remember, she lies. 6 months go by before they finally let me come in, and I sit down with my foster daughter and with the therapist, and the therapist says, so Susan tells me that she's been doing dance class and that she's really enjoying that. And I looked at Susan, that wasn't really her name, but I looked at her and I said, that's very interesting, because Susan is not in dance classes. And then she said, well, what about this? Well, what about this? No, none of those things are happening. Well, what about repairing a relationship with so-and-so? No, that's not happening. Wait a minute, what about these negative things that Susan's been telling me about? No, that's not going on. I thought Susan was here to talk about her lying problems, her impulsivity issues, her obsessive compulsive stuff, her ADHD. I thought she was here to talk about these things. Have you not talked about those things? Well, I started getting to know Susan, and I started asking her about what the hard things are in her life that she's dealing with, and we took it from there. I had to get the state to fire the therapist, and we had to get another one. But after that, I would not work with any therapist that would not talk to me on a regular basis. Now, some people in the therapeutic world would call that micromanaging, but when it's my child's head that is being tampered with, and I have to live with the person on a day-to-day basis. And the therapist only sees them once a week and expects to change their life because of that. I'm going to take my side of the equation for this child very seriously. I'm going to be completely honest. Some of my foster children, even neurodiverse foster children who had trauma and abuse in their backgrounds, actually would have been better off without therapy, and when they got breaks from therapy, did significantly better than when they were seeing the therapist. Some of them had some good outcomes from therapists, but by and large, I did not see amazing outcomes when I was working with these children. Maybe the therapist didn't care about my foster children because they were getting paid through state money, it was Medicaid money. Maybe they didn't care as much, or maybe they were just so stretched thin that they didn't have the time to invest. Or maybe it just wasn't what the child really needed, to go and sit in an office for an hour once a week and tell somebody all about their problems and focus on negative things. And when they pulled away from it, life seemed better and happier somehow. When I talk to parents about the issues facing their children, I ask them, is your child in therapy? And when they say yes, I say, has the behavior improved? Or has it gotten worse since you've been in therapy? And once they analyze that one question, things change in their minds. I know quite a bit about therapy. I've fired therapists. You may have to do that. Make sure your therapist will talk to you. Otherwise, you're not going to have a good experience. So I have some questions that you're going to want to consider before you actually decide that therapy is the way to go. Now, maybe I've already turned you off to therapy. There is so much on this channel. If you have subscribed already to this channel, then you know there is so much here that can help you with your relationships. I would highly recommend looking into the stuff on this channel before you pursue therapy. See if there's some things that you can do yourself first. If a person has experienced actual abuse, actual trauma, meaning like maybe sexual abuse or a very, very shocking occurrence, witnessing something incredibly shocking like a death or a suicide of a loved one or something like that, then they may need to have therapy for sure. But make sure that it's going to be a person who sticks laser focused to the issue and does not start pouring other things into the mind of the child, because that's going to create its own problems. So what are some of the things that you can ask yourself? Here's some questions. You need to be evaluating before and during therapy, and then of course afterward, hopefully you've had some gains, otherwise it was a waste of time. So ask yourself the question, why do I want a person who doesn't know my child and doesn't know me to tell me about my child and to tell my child what to do? Is there a reason? Do you like the idea that maybe because they don't know you, that seems like it means they could give you an objective point of view? Sometimes that's the point of therapy, is to have an objective point of view, okay? But do you also just not want to have to be completely open or honest with a person? Do you realize that if the child is talking to someone who doesn't know them, the chances of them manipulating and lying to that therapist actually go way, way up? It's true. Here's another question. Am I feeling feelings focused or self-focused, meaning how do I feel, what's going on with me right now? Or am I feeling action focused? Is my child feelings focused or self-focused, or are they action focused? So action focused would be where you think to yourself, what do I need to do? What steps do I need to take next? A good therapist should be action-focused, not just feelings-focused and self-focused. They shouldn't make you go into a deep, dark place into yourself. They should be helping you come out into the world so that you can have normal living coming into action. Some people take the let's dive into what's gone on so deeply that it actually can end up scarring a person. In this book, Bad Therapy by Abigail Shrier, she talks a ton about therapy, and she introduces the reader to the concept of iatrogenesis, which basically is the concept that sometimes things do more harm than good. And so you've got to ask yourself, is the going into the feelings going to do more harm, or is it going to do more good? And usually staying actions focused does the more good. Going into too much of the feelings junk ends up doing more harm and getting a person starting to read more into their feelings than they probably should. Another question, does my child want to move on from their problem? Because therapy could be a total waste of time if they don't want to move on. There needs to be some sort of an investment there, like, why am I doing this? What do I want to gain from it? There has to be a vision for it. And do they understand that this therapist does not replace you? That's also a very important question to ask yourself. If I'm going into therapy, does my child understand that I am only bringing the therapist in the mix so that we can have another perspective for the child to consider, but I am not bringing the therapist in the mix to counter my authority or my role as the parent. And ultimately, I'll make the decisions about what we do because of the therapy and when we stay and when we leave from therapy. So you need to ask yourself the question, what do I want to get out of therapy? Or what do I want my child to get out of therapy? If you want a closer relationship for yourself, you're not going to get that out of therapy. If you're putting your child into therapy so that they will like you, it is very likely going to have that iatrogenesis effect. If they go in there talking about you and their problems with you, they will be gossiping about you. And then they will carry that and feel like they've done something behind your back, especially if they're not honest. And so actually, if you want to heal the relationship, you just need to deliberately focus on the relationship and doing things together and allow that time working on it to heal it. That's going to be better than therapy. So ask yourself the question, what do I need to move forward? Do I need understanding? Do I need a friend? What is it that I'm wanting out of this therapist? Do you want the therapist to be your friend? Is that because you don't keep friends very well, or you haven't made friends, or you haven't had time for friends? What is it? You just want to pay someone so that they'll be your friend there for you? The therapist is technically not supposed to be your friend. That actually is unethical. And so they are supposed to stay completely removed from you, but it can feel like a friend when you're sitting there telling them all the stuff that you would normally tell a friend. So could it be better to find a friend or somebody in your family that you trust? Maybe your child, who you're thinking might need therapy, could be going to talk to grandma or grandpa instead. And this leads me to the last question, which is, can I get this anywhere else? There could be other options where you can find understanding for yourself without turning somebody's brain over to somebody else to possibly mold. And it could be good, it could be bad. Just so you know, my favorite type of therapy is definitely cognitive behavioral therapy because it is action focused. So I have two suggestions for you to consider when you're thinking about employing a therapist. There are two things you probably want to be able to check off before you would employ a therapist. If a therapist is a good therapist, then when you meet with them the first time, they will be talking about when you get to end therapy. They're not just using you for money, and they don't just want a long-term client, but they actually want you to get done with therapy. That is a therapist who has integrity. They want people to have normal lives, not lives that are dependent upon therapy. The second thing is, does your therapist share your same core values and world views? This usually means that, religiously speaking, you want to find a therapist that shares that same worldview as you. Now, you don't always have to have that, but at the very least, you need to know they will completely respect and not challenge your religious or belief system. Because if so, then you're going to get a whole lot more than you bargained for out of that therapy session with your child. And it will be stuff you may not want because they could be socially scripting your child. I know of a family whose child left their faith and detached from family because the therapist was the one challenging the faith and the family relationships all the time. And the family still has not properly recovered. So it is important that you have that, you establish it. If you do something unique for your children, like maybe you travel every summer, the therapist supports that. Or maybe you don't go to public school and you do homeschooling. The therapist supports that. If you have a therapist that is against a major life decision that your family has made, you could end up with a problem. Taking deliberate action is important in all aspects of our parenting with our children and in our family life. And so if you want to take deliberate action for your family, I'm pretty sure that you're going to want to learn more about self-government, which is what this channel is all about. There is a great video that I highly recommend that you start with that will give you the nuts and bolts of learning the skills and principles of self-government. And that video is called The Not So Known Secret for Parenting Success. Click on the link to that video now. I'll see you there.